Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Three Principles Global Community webinar. The Three Principles Global Community, or 3 PGC, is a nonprofit organization that's committed to bringing an understanding of the three principles to people throughout the world. Today, we have Aaron Turner and Anna Holmback with us. Both Aaron and Anna are on the 3 PGC board, and they're going to talk about looking for change, that hope is at hand with the upcoming global event. So Aaron, Anna, thank you so much, and I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you. So my name's Aaron Turner. I have been working in the field of the three principles, which is something we'll talk more about throughout this hour. So if that doesn't mean anything to you, don't worry. It doesn't need to at this stage. For the last 20 years, I've worked as a counselor, seeing individuals, families, couples. I've done a lot of work. Most of my work now is as a consultant, working with organizations and leaders. And along the way, we've run a lot of pilots in other areas like mediation and education and all of that. And the reason that I'm doing that, and the topic that Anna and I wanted to talk about today, was change. Because the three principles refers to an understanding of the mind that includes several groundbreaking discoveries highlighted by a man called Sydney Banks. And the 3 PGC was created to try and make these groundbreaking discoveries available to the general public. And the reason for that isn't academic, it's very practical. So when I came across the discoveries of Sydney Banks, through the work of George and Linda Pransky and all the people that work with them in Lacona, I was probably 17 or 18 at that time. And what I didn't know about myself, which I see about a lot of adults, is that I'd come to a lot of conclusions about myself and about people in general. Unbeknownst to me, in my 18 years of existence, I'd kind of figured out that people had different personalities, they had different strengths and limitations, they had different characteristics. And in my opinion, those were pretty much set. And you'd be hard pressed to make much difference in a person's personality, strengths and weaknesses. And you could work hard on that, and that was very admirable. And I was doing that in my own way for myself. But I really didn't see a huge potential for change. So, and that was based on my experience. So in my experience, up until 18 years old, and that remained true until my 23, 24 years old, until I started really seeing what these discoveries were pointing to, I noticed that I had certain strengths. And some of those strengths were, I could think clearly, I could think logically, I could see the simplicity behind things. And I had certain weaknesses, which was, I wasn't a very relaxed human being. I wasn't a very open human being. I wasn't very comfortable with my feelings, and I didn't do very well with other people. I had some very close friends and family that I got on well with, but they always treated me like I meant well, but you know when they say a couple of sandwiches short of a lunchbox? that was the impression I got. And in my experience, I was very awkward and preoccupied around people. Life was not comfortable for me. It didn't bother me. I wasn't bothered by the discomfort. You know, I didn't see myself as a weakling, but I was not comfortable, and I was very uncomfortable socially. And I worked hard on that. Like, I worked hard to get comfortable socially. And as a result, I didn't interview well, so I didn't do well in my career was a little bit stunted. My romantic relationships started off well, but quickly went downhill. They didn't really flourish. So like every romantic relationship I had a 3-month shelf life, which as an analytical person didn't make sense, because every relationship was different. But it was undeniably likely that it had something to do with me, because I was the only common denominator, and I just didn't know how to get to the bottom of that. But I worked hard on these things and they didn't get better. And I unconsciously drew the conclusion that, well, that's just me. I got my strengths, I got my weaknesses. You know, what are you going to do? And everybody else is like that. And I think I work with a lot of adults and I work with a lot of people in business, and they're not people that are particularly looking for help. They're not people that are particularly looking for change. Usually they've been, you know, they've done fine in their careers to fantastic in their careers. And when you talk to them about the possibilities for change that are available through understanding the mind differently, it's hard for people to really be open to it. And when they start to experience it, they're shocked. They don't really understand what's happening to them. Like I had an owner of a company call me up out of the blue and say, Aaron, what have you done to me? I'm like, well, why? What's happening? He says, well, I'm in a cab, I'm late, I'm in traffic, and I'm not upset. Now, I know that sounds like a small thing, but it's a radical change for that person, and they didn't do anything to get it. And that is not on people's radar. It's not on people's radar that you can have a radical positive change without any effort. And that's what happened to me. When I started to appreciate what Sydney Banks's discoveries were pointing to, that there was a potential of mind. You know how people sometimes say we're using 5% of our brain? I mean, that's, I don't know how you measure that, but that we have an inkling that the mind is a very, very powerful tool, a very, very powerful resource, a very, very powerful, and we have evidence of it. We have genius thought out of the blue. We have rich experiences of life. We have very close, meaningful connections with people. But what we don't know is that that's a function of what our mind is capable of. So most of the adults that I work with, including me before I had a more open mind about this, would honestly say that, you know, you could change a little bit, but it'd be a lot of work. And in fact, actually, a lot of people are reluctant to come and work with me, because when they hear the kind of change that I think is possible for everybody to have ease, for everybody to have well-being, for everybody to have a rich contentment and an energy in life, for everybody to have very functional, satisfying, happy relationships, even with people you don't currently like, they say, well, firstly, I don't think that's really possible. And secondly, I can't imagine how hard it would be. And they're measuring using their current understanding. And the reason why we're having this conference on change is that there's so much more of what people are looking for available with no work. So as I started to consider that I wasn't experiencing my personality, I'm going to say this slowly so that you can hear it. I was experiencing my respect for certain kinds of thought, analytical thought. I had a huge respect for analytical thought. In my world, if you weren't analyzing, you were dumb, right? You would just fritter your life away. What I didn't understand was when you're analyzing, the kind of full coordinated functioning of your mind does not kick in. It's very linear, it's very narrow. And one of the indications of that is that the richer experiences of mind, like love, well-being, contentment, inspiration, realization, don't happen when you're analyzing. And it's not that you shouldn't analyze, it's just you shouldn't treat analysis like it's somehow hardwired, which is what I was doing. I didn't know I could be just as much of a people person as I was an analysis person. And as it stopped making sense for me to be analyzing things so much, I fell into a much more present, appreciative, more confident state of mind, and my people skills went way up. No practice, no training, no 5 steps to better people skills. They just increased. And because of that, my career improved. So I started interviewing well, and people started appreciating what I had to offer rather than it being shrouded by my kind of introversion. And so my career just started taking off. And not only did my academic career started taking off, I was kind of tipped to be, you know, the next hot thing in my university, but I started getting opportunities in other things. We made a TV pilot, and I started getting all sorts of other kinds of work because I was actually present when people were talking to me. And so they could see what I had to offer, and they liked being with me, and I got all these opportunities. At the same time, my relationship life started taking off. Now, to me, what that was instead of trying to figure out how to have the right type of relationship, I just fell into my relationship and just really enjoyed it. And it just blossomed. The thing I was trying to do, but was starting to wonder whether it would ever happen, happened automatically when I was a more natural version of myself. And so it really blew my mind that without any learning of approaches and new ways of thinking, this more natural version of myself came out. Not that I needed to be in it all the time. I can analyze with the best of them, you know, at any time I want to. But I know I can't get the kind of clarity I'm looking for from that most of the time, which is freed me from a burden of trying to analyze my way through my life, which made it less pleasant and also less productive. Right, so that's me. So before I'd come across these discoveries, if you said, Aaron, can you be this way? I would have said, I'm trying, but I'm starting to think no. Whereas when I started to see how my relationship to my thought affected me and how that affected my relationship to that wider potential of mind. Okay. So I wanted to give people a little bit of a flavor for how much change is possible just through getting a new understanding of mind, or what leads us to be the way that we are, and how optional that is. But the second thing I wanted to talk about is oftentimes people will see that and they'll say, yeah, okay. And I was this way too. It's like when George and Linda Pransky and the people that work with them, Keith Blevins and Dicken Bettinger, Sandy Crott, were saying to me, well, Aaron, you know, you could feel better. You could have more well-being. I couldn't imagine why that was relevant. It's like, well, yeah, I guess, but that's not what I'm shooting for. I'm shooting for a career here. I'm not shooting for, you know, being happy. That could maybe happen on the weekend. And I didn't really understand the link between our well-being and the power of thought that we have moment to moment. And if you step back from life, you'll see it. Like, you'll see that as human beings become more stressed and upset, their thinking becomes more dysfunctional and unhelpful, and they're the last to know. Right? So if you find someone that's in a state and they tell you their best idea, you're thinking, oh my God, don't do it. Whatever you do, don't do it. Okay. And if you look at people's lives, you'll notice that when they're suffering and they think they're thinking clearly, that's the worst decisions they ever make. Right? Because there's this unappreciated link between the way that we feel and this is a really not a good way of saying it, but our clarity of mind, like our profundity of mind, our level of perspective, our level of insight, our level of clarity, our resourcefulness. Like, you know, when you're not thinking about something, the thoughts that you have are absolute genius. And it doesn't matter whether it's, what am I going to buy my wife for Christmas, or where should I have lunch, or what am I going to do about this complicated family problem. It doesn't matter what it is. Genius ideas just pop into your mind, right? That link between your freedom of mind, your level of ease, and the power and usefulness of your thinking is so unappreciated. So when I work with businesses, what I see, and this is true in mediations, and it's true in families, and it's true in relationships, you see people that are stressed and upset trying to figure out a problem. And they can't do it. And they don't realize that they can't do it because they lack the clarity. They think they can't do it because it's a hard problem, right? And so much of the issues that people are trying to deal with, they don't have the mental bandwidth to solve, which is fine if they knew it, right? If you don't have the mental bandwidth to solve a problem and you don't know it, you just think the problem's impossible, right? It's like trying to climb up a slippery hill in your socks, or trying to cycle a bicycle with the chains not on. You know, pedaling faster just isn't going to help, right? And there are lots and lots and lots of feelings that most of us think are normal that tell you you cannot solve the problem you're dealing with. Stress, insecurity, seriousness, intensity, impatience, panic, overwhelm, upset, right? Those feelings tell you your bike chain's off. So then the question is, what are you pedaling for? Right? And what's absolutely magical about these discoveries and why we're doing this conference is, if you start to understand that, and you start to understand that if you can separate the way that you feel from the problem you're trying to solve, you will naturally start to feel better. And when you feel better, you will naturally start to have the kind of thoughts that will solve that problem. And not only that, like when I've worked in organizations, they've had problems that they've been trying to solve for years that they basically decided, yeah, you can't solve that. You can't solve that. So for example, one of the first companies I worked with in the UK had been founded by two of the owners, and they'd had a very family type feeling. They started off very small, and they cared about their staff, and their whole culture was about feeling like family and treating people well and everybody feeling good. That was it. When they wanted to grow the company, they hired this hotshot executive, and he came in, and what he saw was, instead of a family feeling, he saw lazy people. So he said, this lazy inefficiency cannot continue. I'm going to whip this place into shape. So he starts whipping, and some people leave and the rest don't like it, weirdly. And then he starts hiring hotshots. So before you know it, you've got this kind of gang war of the culture, where there's the people that feel like it's all about the family feeling, and that's under attack, and they're huddling around the family feeling. And there's this other group that feel like this is a business, you need to be professional, and they're getting further and further and further apart, right? So I interviewed them all, and I realized that. But my job wasn't to solve that problem. My job was to share these discoveries about the mind, because the other problem that they had was everybody was so stressed out. They you know, when you get stressed and then you get overwhelmed and it's like, nobody talk to me, I can't hear another thing, just me. Okay, well, that can happen, believe me. And they were like that. So my job was to show them how you can have just as much to do, and that stress is optional, because we've discovered that everything you're feeling is coming from thought, and you can't change the thought you have, but it's totally up to you how you relate to it. So you can have freedom from stress, you can have freedom from resentment, you can have freedom. And that's a powerful change, to know you can have freedom from something that otherwise victimizes you. So we did this 3-day training, right? And I want to show you the link between understanding the mind and having freedom of mind, and problem solving, right? That's change in understanding, change in well-being, change in the world. That there's a direct, absolute link. You can't have one without the other. You can't change your state of mind without changing your understanding. You can't have change in a situation without a new quality of mind. It's just not going to happen. So the two things that happened after, and we just did 3 days talking about exactly what this conference is going to be talking about. The discoveries that Sid pointed to. And two things happened. The first thing that happened is the cultural split disappeared. It completely disappeared because people realized that when they felt resentful and aggressive, they weren't in a clear mind. So they just stopped listening to that. And as a result, they felt very open and at ease. And as a result, they had goodwill for each other. And as a result, they all started working really hard and well together. And some people thought that efficiency was important, and some people thought the feeling was important. And when we asked them the values of the company, the leadership said, we want to be the only company that has professional excellence and a warm feeling. So there are some companies that have a warm feeling, but they're really inefficient. And there are some companies that are really efficient, but they're cold. We want to have both. And we realize that this state of mind of presence and goodwill is the way to do it. That happened automatically. When they weren't bogged down in stress, they saw a new solution, and it happened. And that has not been an issue to this day. And that was 8 years ago. The second thing that happened was they'd been trying to grow for 7 years, but they hadn't quite found it just didn't happen. Immediately after that training, they started to grow, and within 3 years, they doubled in size. And what they realized was it wasn't the opportunities that were stopping them growing, is that everybody had no mental space. So if you said to one of them, excuse me, could you pass me the tea bags? They would say, no, I can't think of anything else. I can't pass you the tea bags, right? So let alone, let's figure out how to grow. They had no space for it. And as soon as they stopped using all their mental space for stress, they started to have space for all the thoughts necessary to grow, and they grew, right? So one of the discoveries we've seen is that through an understanding, we all can really change in a positive way because we are more positive naturally. Like I had a client last week, and he really was struggling with the idea of change until he realized, oh my God, I was this way when I was a kid. Kids have pure minds. So he could see, oh, I already have it. So we're finding the power of something we already have that we've kind of forgotten we have, or we don't really appreciate it. And as soon as you find it, it kickstarts a whole new level of thoughts and feelings that will create change in your family, in your community, in your workplace, etc., etc. And that's why we're doing this conference, so that the adults of the world can realize how much of the change they would love to dream about but are too afraid to hope for is available, and just how directly that affects the actual physical circumstances of our lives, relationships, families, workplace, communities, globe, etc., etc. So I wanted to kind of share that from my perspective, but I also, I wanted us to have a chance to hear from Anna as well, so you can hear from a whole nother perspective.
Yeah, and thank you, Aaron.
Yeah.
As I was hearing, there's so many ways that we could go, but I was just remembering again, it's something that happens, and I hear it from many clients and friends that are involved in the three principles, that once the change occurs, you forget how you used to be. And I remember when we started talking about the conference back in September of last year, we had like a mini retreat, and the idea started taking form. And I remember that it was last year. Well, first of all, my name is Anna Holmback. I just want to say hi to everybody, and thank you for being here. It's quite a treat to be sharing with all of you. I've worked with small businesses for many, many years. I now consult small business owners, and I work with a nonprofit organization that called the Young Center, and we are helping. I'm a child advocate for kids, undocumented kids that are locked in shelters here in Arizona. That has been really beautiful to work with kids, because my native language is Spanish, so it helps. Usually they're coming from Central America and Mexico, some from South America. And so it's a wonderful thing that to be able to just bring, sometimes it's just your presence, but to bring a little bit of peace of mind to them really helps. So anyway, as I was saying, when we were talking about the online conference, I said, last year, it was around this time on Valentine's Day. And there was a radio program in NPR, National Public Radio, National Public, NPR. It's a radio station, public broadcasting. And they were talking about statistics on how people felt around Valentine's Day, and the percentage of depressed people was quite high. I can't remember if it was in the world, 50%. It was something around 50, 60%. I was like, oh my gosh. I wasn't depressed before hearing about the principles and the changes that occurred, but I was quite sad. I had like a sadness in me, a melancholy in me. I was melancholic. I was a little bit, in a way, frustrated too. Life didn't make sense in so many ways. And it was off for me in a way. I was doing okay my professional life. I had a wonderful partner, but within me, there was something that didn't make sense. And then when I started hearing about the principles, especially the nature of thought that in a way Aaron is talking about, that was the first thing. I was like, oh my gosh, that was the missing link. And so when I heard that radio show, I was like, people just don't have the understanding. And I have forgotten about it. And it really touched me. And I remember when we started talking about this conference, it was like, this goes on in the world. This goes on in the world because either a misunderstanding or not knowing. So the fact that the word understanding is on the online conference, I think it's wonderful that we have that. We're just bringing that to the public. And second, I wanted to say something about, I know you wanted to talk about the 3 PGC, but for me, when I first heard Kathy Casey, I heard Michael Neill, and then I went to a weekend intensive with Kathy Casey and Michael Neill, and I heard her, and it was like, oh my gosh, that's, we all have, those definite moments, as George Pransky called them, a definite moment. And then I went home and I heard something, Sydney Banks. I heard that. I heard several safety net. I heard thought, she gave this metaphor as thoughts were just like the subtitles on CNN. And for me, that was like huge. Oh, just like continuously, you get those subtitles, like the news, the subtitle news on CNN. It was just like that, something like that. So I went back home, and of course, let me just Google what in the world am I hearing? And the place that I found in that time that I could just sit watch videos and just, register to the newsletter and so on. It was through the Three PGC. It was accurate, truthful information. It was light and fun, and it was like so revealing, and meeting so many diverse practitioners that were running webinars. And that was, for me, that was like, oh, this is the place. So years later, six and something years later, here we are offering this online conference to the world, 48 hours, twice around the world. I think that's so cool. 48 hours continuously, 54 speakers. Out of those, so many, I don't know how many webinars, I know in 54 speakers, but we have 10 webinars in languages different than English, like Danish and German and Romanian, Spanish, Dutch, Swedish. So it's like, and here it is, from just registered practitioners dedicating themselves to spread this word, Cindybank's story, and just bringing hope to the world. A real story. And you hear that from over and over and over. I was just talking to a client, business owner, and she was just telling me, she has employees, and they come and not coming on time, they have problems, the kid, and then the uniform, it all shrink, it's not ironing. She said, I used to react to them and da. And it's like, even with that, I'm like, wow, I feel good. I'm feeling good. Then I can talk to that, to that worker, and just talk to them as human beings. And so I'm just thrilled. I'm just thrilled to have this. I think we're going to have lots of fun. If you read all the, you can go to the 3pgc.org website, and there's the online conference. You can read all the titles from all the practitioners, and it's just what comes out of it. It's we're bringing hope to the world, and I'm thankful for that. I'm thankful to be in it as a speaker and as a participant, and just be part of this that we're doing. Yeah. So thank you. Back to you, Aaron.
Well, no, I'm glad you said all that, because there's going to be so many different stories and perspectives from all around the world on what we're talking about. I'm really looking forward to that as well. So, well, I don't know if there are any questions people have about either what we're talking about or this upcoming conference, because I was thinking, if you're already interested in the principles and seeing the value of it, then this conference might be a chance for you to kind of give other people the opportunity to drop in and kind of get a little bit of a feel for it themselves from lots of different perspectives.
We have a question from David.
Oh, hi. Can you hear me okay?
Oh, yes, I can.
Hey, Aaron. Hey, guys. Yeah, thanks. It's been a really good talk tonight. Thanks, Anna and Aaron. I just wanted to ask a question about, and maybe it's something that will be covered in the conference more. It's just really about grounding and the limits of our understanding in this. And that I, from my experience, we come up against things in the outside world where, the ability to go back to what Aaron was saying, that the free mind, the clear mind, is really challenged. And it really seems like a circumstance in our lives is really tough, if something very serious happens to us. And that ability to still let the personal thinking die down and come back to that calm center, that free mind that Aaron talks about, and then see that situation differently and see it from that perspective of presence and love and clarity, which is always there. But as practitioners, I think I'd just like to hear from you guys. Like, I suppose we all come up against instances in our lives where we're really challenged, and it really seems outside in. But then in the next moment, maybe an hour or a day or a week later, we do return to what Aaron was saying about the clear mind, and we do get a shift in perspective and see it in a healthier way. And I wonder if there's like a difference between that and when some other philosophies might talk about accepting circumstances or accepting situations, whereas in the principles, when we see things from a higher level of consciousness, it just looks completely different anyway, and we no longer have to accept what looks like a difficult circumstance. We just see it from a different perspective, and it doesn't feel like acceptance. It feels more like returning to a clear mind and seeing it from a position of more strength. So the question's really about, do we all, even as practitioners, we continue to hit limits in our grounding and our understanding in this?
Well, I tell you what I hear in what you're saying, David, is, when I first started to listen to people talk about thought and mind and the kind of things we've been talking in this webinar, I started to get more freedom of mind. I started to get more peace of mind. I started to get more ease of mind. But I didn't really appreciate that it was coming from my understanding. I thought I was doing it, right? Mm-hmm. And one of the changes that we're pointing to is that it is something that is hard for us, as in coming from the world that we come from, this modern world. I don't know what it was like any other time, but we have the idea that we're doing our lives, not that we're at the effect of our understanding of it. That's a massive shift. And I tell you a symptom of it. When I thought I was doing my clarity of mind, I would measure how I was doing by whether I was in a clear, free mind or not. Right? Now, and when I realized it doesn't really matter what mind you're in, what feeling you're in, what you're benefiting from or being limited by is the way that you understand it. Right? So a really simple example. If I'm ruminating on a resentment or stressing out about a deadline, it matters whether I think it matters whether I think I'm onto anything real and have any semblance of clarity of mind or not. That's what matters, because that will determine what I make of what I'm experiencing, whether I consider it to have any credibility or grounding in it. Okay. And so I'll have clients that say, "Oh, how do you stop ruminating?" And I'm trying to show them it doesn't matter if you really know what thought is. You can ruminate away; it won't do anything to you. Okay, so the real shift that I hear in what you're talking about is really looking towards as much of an uncompromising understanding on a heartfelt level, rather than what kind of feeling you're in, what kind of state of mind you're in. It doesn't really tell you that much. So, but because our understanding is always partial, the beauty of it is you always get opportunities to extend it if you're looking towards the understanding piece rather than the how do I get in the right state of mind piece. Right? So if you're looking for I need to have a different kind of feeling about this, you don't learn, you just try harder and then feel bad that it didn't work. Oh, what kind of purgatory is that? So but if you look towards the understanding, it will demystify, and then you'll have a shift in your experience and understanding on an understanding level. That's what grounding is. If you wrote down reality is ... that's your grounding. And it can always improve. That's the beauty of it. As much of a profound change as you get from a new understanding, that profundity and more is still available every day, because we're always, the way I think about it is, we're halfway up an infinite scale. So we're always in the middle, but you can always go up or down relative to yourself. But relative to what's possible, you're always halfway up, no matter how much you develop.
Yeah, that's great, Aaron. Thank you. So like the power is in the understanding, not necessarily from staying in a clear mind. Yeah. Got it. Thank you.
Anyway, for what it's worth. I don't know if you wanted to add anything, Anna.
No. That was really good, Aaron.
Yeah. Well, have you guys all seen, have you guys kind of looked at all the information on the conference? Do you like the way it looks? Do you have any thoughts about it? Do you like the way it's set up? Are you considering whether to join us? Are you going to join us? Yes, Dorothy's joining us. You can unmute yourself, Dorothy, if you want. Oh, Bonnie, can you unmute Dorothy? Yeah, Martine's joining us. Hi.
Yes. Yes?
Yes.
Do you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I was first on the computer, but it didn't work, so this is my iPad. This is my iPad, this is me. And I'm on the conference.
Great.
I'm on the conference. I hope I can receive it in the train because I have to travel, but I'm going to try.
Great. Great.
So.
Fabulous. Really pleased. And,
Yes.
and you can, if you miss some of the videos because you're on the train or because you sleep during the night, I think all the recordings will be available so you can watch them all.
Yes, I will sleep during the night.
Okay.
in my night.
Yeah, in your night. That's right. Yeah, that's right.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm enjoying it.
Oh,
Thank
great.
you.
Oh, it's a pleasure. It'd be funny
Yes.
if there are some insomniacs out there that like the idea of the conference because there'll be something to watch, but they watch it and they calm down, they fall asleep. They're like, damn it.
Yes.
For one time there's something to watch all night and I slept through it.
Yes, but I have a lot of on my iPhone in the night, and sometimes I awake with a text from one of you, and I think, okay, I was dreaming, and then it seems to be my ears in my. It's not a dream, but it's reality.
Yeah, that's great.
So, yeah. I'm there.
Great, so glad. I'm really glad you're coming.
Yes.
Nice to hear from you.
Yes. Okay.
Great. And where are you?
Okay.
Where are you?
I'm in Dokkum, of all places, in Holland.
Oh,
the Netherlands.
In the Netherlands, yeah, fantastic.
Yes.
Fantastic, great.
Yes.
So we'll have two webinars. I'm sorry. We'll have two webinars in Dutch.
Yeah.
Okay.
Great.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I am in London.
I'm learning my English.
It's good. Very good.
Yeah. Okay. Bye.
Bye, Dorothy. Frank, you have your hand up.
Hi, Aaron. Love to hear your latest way of talking about the three principles. Very inspiring. In terms of the conference, I am signed up. I don't plan to go 48 hours without sleep, so I shall be watching the recordings, probably for quite a long time, I'm guessing. A practical question, all these speakers, are they all basically end-to-end? So, no, so some of them are in parallel, yeah?
No, they're end-to-end.
Yes.
Some of the foreign language talks are in parallel.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I was going to say that the foreign language ones, given I don't speak anything other than English, will be the ones I will probably not get round to watching.
Yeah. Well, those are the ones you can
So
listen
I
to
am.
feeling. If you want to listen for a feeling,
Oh, yes.
listen to the foreign language ones.
Some of them, that's good. Some of them are during breaks. So
Okay.
you can look at the schedule and then I thought that was going to be really cool. Like I'm going to be facilitating some of the webinars, and one of them in the I think the Dutch one, and I know Spanish, and there's another Martin from Sweden. So I said Romanian, Loredana, and I said I have no idea. So that's going to be really cool to just sit there and listen to the feeling.
Yeah.
To the feeling.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting idea.
I spoke at a conference in Italy a couple of years ago, and I asked not to have a translator when I was listening. They had a translator when I was speaking, and it really was interesting because you just didn't get distracted by what people were saying, and you just picked up where they were coming from in a really direct way. It was very cool, actually.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Is the schedule published? Because I haven't seen it in any of the emails, but I haven't been to the site. So do we know who's on when? Has that been published yet? Yeah.
Bonnie, where will they find that?
Yeah, the schedule is right on the main page of the conference. And when you register, the schedule is there also, as well as a downloadable version with all the access information.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
And Ellen says, appreciate the prize, so helpful for many. I have shared it with many friends and clients.
Oh, great.
Yes. And we wanted to make it affordable to anyone. And if there's somebody that can afford it, there are ways. We don't want anybody missing it.
Anything else on anyone's mind? Okay. Well, then we can just sit quietly for 10 minutes. Nobody's allowed to leave until the end. No, but I mean, if there's nothing on people's minds, then we can. Oh, yes, Mete. Is that how you say it, Mete? Yeah. So Mete had a hand up. Hello.
Hello, I'm totally new to this.
Great.
Even though I have been inspired by other pointers in the history. But I have one question. Because I think a lot like other people. What if someone is coming and searching for help?
Yeah.
Who are very traumatized.
Yes.
For instance, coming from war zone,
yes,
have been out fighting there, and suddenly they are sitting in this situation where all the thoughts
yes,
are moving around by themselves, or
yes,
or maybe a girl traumatized because
yes,
of the father being. How do you say to them? It's only a matter of your thoughts. I think, woo!
yeah. Well, the truth is, Mate, you don't really want to say that, but if they see that for themselves, they'll find their freedom. So if you have someone like that, and you're thinking about this conference, the challenge is to keep listening, with an open mind. So we've had people that have suffered from serious trauma speak at our conferences, and also I've worked with people that have post-traumatic stress from either terrorist attacks and also military service. Okay, and the challenge is when they're listening, they feel like, no, what I have is different this isn't right. But if they can keep listening, say, don't worry, just keep an open mind, keep listening. These people that I'm thinking of all saw something for themselves, like, oh, my trauma, like one lady talked at the conference, and my trauma happened when I was 7. Now I'm thinking about it. I don't have to think about it. It's not that the trauma wasn't a big deal, and it's not that she hasn't suffered for many years. She didn't realize that she was playing a role in her suffering, and she didn't realize it was optional. So she went from traumatized, a horrible life, to a whole new life like that. And same happened with the veterans. When one of them realized, oh, you're not saying we didn't have trauma. You're saying now we're experiencing thought. Now we're experiencing thought, and it's not dangerous, and we're not broken. And as soon as one of them saw it, he was like, oh, and then he answered everybody else's questions. So you can't really tell someone that, but the idea of the conference is you hear it from different people's experiences, from so many different perspectives, that underneath your mind is kind of hearing the same thing in different ways. And oftentimes it will find a way where it makes sense to you, where you're like, oh, then is the beginning of starting to get that freedom. And the tragedy is, people who have traumatic suffering don't think they can have any happiness and relief. So the people that need it the most feel like they can get it the least. And it's not fair, and it's not true. So even though sometimes it can be hard to keep an open mind for people that have significant trauma, it is wonderful when they discover they have the same ability for well-being as people that don't have trauma. You can't tell them that because it sounds disrespectful. But because it's true, they can pick it up. In their own time, they can pick it up. And when they pick it up, that can change a person's life hugely. So it's just being able to keep listening, just keep listening. You hear something that doesn't make sense, don't worry about it. Just keep listening. You're like, when I actually work with army leaders, and they thought I was such a waste of time. But I said to them, look, you're here with me. I'll tell you neutrally if you listen. I won't try to convince you, and you keep an open mind. And they learned so much, because everything they learned, they saw for themselves. They didn't take my word for it at all. So they saw what was true, not what I was saying. And that's what we're looking for, is like, take a look and see what's true. So this conference might be a good opportunity if someone can keep listening.
And
thank you for that. Yeah.
there is something that we share in the that I know it's going to happen in the conference, and we share in webinars, intensive, all kinds of activities that we have, which is the feeling. We always talk about that. And that feeling is, you know, when it's like you can pick it up, that they're talking to that place in you, which is, no matter what you have experienced, you're okay. You're not told that, but you are okay. There is innate health in you. There's something, you're fine. There's a place within that you're okay. And once you're in touch with that, and it comes through the feeling, you're in touch with that, it's like you listen more. Because it's not even, if you have a lot of noise, just sit there, try to listen. It's like, oh, I can't, you know. But there's a feeling that you hear. There's something that allows you to be there. allows you and it's like takes you. And sometimes you can only be 10, 15 minutes, go back and then come back, and then you're there again. And there's, you know, when people who've experienced a lot of stress and trauma, they can pick it up very quickly if they're being accepted or not. If that, you know, if there's a flow there, if the true nature, and that we're gonna have full of that in the conference. When you think about the story of Sydney Banks, that really that's, you know, the relevance. One point of the relevance of his role, Sydney Banks, is his own story, and it comes through the feeling. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
I haven't read or heard his story. I heard some of his on YouTube, but not his story. Well, I actually think I have been somehow practicing this through some period of my life, the last 18 years, but not knowing it, and therefore not being able to do it more. But I really had some good experience. I call it give some things to God, not to act with it myself. Well, I see it as actually all the same. So I let go of it, and 2 hours maybe later, I can't remember what I gave to him, and things has evolved in the right direction. So thankful. Yeah. So yeah, I have quite some experience. It's nice with experience. Good. So, but I know there are some persons who are very traumatized. So yeah, I'm thankful for your answers. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Well, if you have any other questions, then you know, please write to us. Is there some way that we close out, Bonnie?
Yeah, well, I just want to let everybody know, Ellen posted, thank you, Ellen. Ellen posted the direct link to the conference page on the chat window. But if you're listening and you can't see that, please go to 3pgc.org. And there's a big picture you can click on, or there are the words 2020 conference. You can click on there and get all the information. And thanks so much, Aaron and Erin. This was a great little synopsis and introduction to what we're going to be hearing. Really appreciate it. And then just to let everybody know, thank you all for coming live, and let everybody know that the next webinar is with Dr. Bill Pettit on March 11th. So hopefully we'll see you then live as well. Yeah.
Nice to see you all. Thank you for coming.
Yeah, thank you. Bye, everyone.